Welcome back to the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. We're brought to you by Yak Gadgets. For all your fine quality kayak fishing accessories, go to yakgadget.com. Pelican cases, cooler, and lighter. Go to pelican.com. And the 153 Bait Company. For all your hard and soft bait needs, go to the 153angler.com. Now let's join our special guest around the campfire. Welcome back, everyone. Another episode of Feather and Fur. Your host, Brad Hurlebus. And we're coming off my birthday episode last week, and we're going straight to the West Coast. And I got a special guest named James Norton on, so we're going to bring him in right away. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, man. I mean, we've been friends on Facebook for a while now, and I've seen you progress out west, and you're doing some exciting stuff. So I'm really excited to talk to you tonight about that.
Yeah, definitely. Excited to share.
yeah, it'll be good. It'll be a good show. I like getting a different perspective on hunting in different areas, and West Coast is somewhere I've never been, so I'm probably gonna have a ton of questions, and I'm gonna sound like a rookie because I don't know what I'm doing out there. So, but it's just all more knowledge and sharing experiences. So,
okay, yeah, no, I'd love to share that with you.
Yeah. Well, we'll start where I always start. How'd you get to how did you end up hunting? Like, what started your drive and your passion and that fire to really take it to the field?
So, I didn't really grow up in a hunting home. My dad was from the Northwest originally, and I think he had gone hunting a few times. And I grew up with dogs, so we always had dogs. My parents had springers. And then probably when I was about 12 years old, one of my friend's dads got a bird dog. And, he got it professionally trained. It was a Vizsla, actually. And I saw that, and I was like, oh, man, I got to have that. So at the time, I wanted a lab. And I would watch the ESPN Super Retriever series, and I was like, I got to get a lab because in high school I mostly dove and duck hunted. Now I'm totally an upland hunter and do the total opposite. So I got a lab, and he was AKC registered, nothing special, but I put a ton of time into him, and worked with a couple different trainers, and he turned out nice. And I'm 28 now, and he died in August, and he lived 14 years old. So that was my first dog. But I kind of got into it my own. I would see people train, and then some of my friends hunted in high school, and so I'd go with them. And then my dad started hunting with me, and so, but I was the one who initiated it.
That's awesome. And it's awesome that you took it on at a young enough age where you almost were able to get your father into it with you to make some of those memories of hunting with your dad then. Yeah.
Oh no, I've hunted a lot with my dad. He's a cool guy. And my best friend, and he was in the Army, and he had guns, but he wasn't a super big hunter or anything like that, or he didn't run dogs. So but he liked it too, and we just kind of went with it.
No, that's awesome. And I get it. I'm a late onset hunter. I took it on in my early 20s. No one in my family hunted. I rented a farmhouse, and it was in the back corner of the field would flood, and I'd get mallards and geese in there constantly. So I'm like, I got to learn how to duck hunt, because it totally skewed how easy I thought duck hunting was, because they always wanted to be in that field. So, right. I mean, we'd pressure it for a little bit, back off, pressure it for a little bit, and they just keep coming back. So it totally skewed my judgment of how easy it was to duck hunt. Because I do quite a bit of duck hunting still. I spend pretty much all October chasing grouse and woodcock. And then come November, I spend quite a bit of time chasing ducks and a little bit of deer. But now it's a grind, and now I'm working for it. And it's man, I had something special back there, and I knew it was special, but I didn't know how special.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool.
But no, it's funny you started with a lab. I started with a lab as well. And for a first-time trainer, they're such a great breed. They're really, because they're so forgiving.
Oh, they're so forgiving. They're bold. If you're kind of an aggressive guy, you can make some mistakes, and they'll meet you halfway. And that's how my dog was. I mean, Shadow couldn't have asked for a better first dog. Now I buy a little bit, higher end dogs and whatnot, but for a first dog, he was awesome. And I did do some upland bird hunting, and that's I ended up one time going on a quail hunt with him and my friend and his dad and their dogs. And I think they had labs too. And I really liked that. I was I enjoyed duck and dove, But I always like to hike with my dogs too, like outside of hunting season. So upland bird hunting was kind of like, hiking with your dog with a gun. And out here we got a lot of valley quail if you know where to look, and it's just a lot of fun.
And
So
I completely get it because I made that switch too. Like I say a duck hunt,
yeah.
right? But my first primary drive is upland. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
it's like I duck hunt for the social aspect, like get a couple buddies together, you're right next to each other, you're drinking coffee, you're having a good time in the blind. But like when we go out,
Right.
we go out grouse hunting like with our dogs, we kind of split up a little bit. Like we work the same area, but we're kind of split up. We're not right on top of each other. We're both working our own dog to cover more ground. We're
Right.
walking in the same direct, but it's not as social, but it's not like deer hunting where it's solitary. Cause like you really just like what I think I like most about upland hunting is I'm 100% focused on the moment. I'm watching
Oh
my
yeah.
dog intently to see if like what
Yeah.
she's doing on scent. I'm
Yeah.
constantly like being a grouse hunter. I'm constantly like walking through trees and under branches and trying not to get beat myself up too much. But
Yeah.
I'm I'm 100% immersed in the moment. Like there's no other thought in my mind. Like there's no work. There's no anything. Like there's not like there's the guy I'm hunting with. I'm always like safety factor, right? But I mean,
Right.
even like at that point, like he's my best friend in the world, but he's not really in that equation because right now it's me and my dog, and
Right.
exactly in the moment of what we're trying to do, and that's find that grouse.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah. So when we hunt, a lot of I do hunt by myself, but a lot of times I'll hunt with a buddy or two or my dad. Actually, I ended up getting my older brother into hunting too. And so I'll usually go with a few of us, and like you, we'll split up. A lot of the cover, like we hunt for the quail, they're in like sagebrush, so it's kind of like rolling hills, and it's nice walking. It's really cool. My dad's turning 70. That's something he can still do.
Oh, that's
I
awesome.
do, yeah. I also so in California, my two favorite things to hunt here are valley quail and chucker. Chucker I love because it's a challenge, and it's big country, it's tough country, and the best part about it too, it's all public. So if you know where to go, you can just go, and it's just you can just let the dogs run big, and it's awesome. And last year we had a really good season. But some of my chucker spots, I can't take like older guys there. It's kind of more of a young man's game, or you got to be in shape. Because
Sure.
you're going up. So those are the two, and we do have mountain quail as well. I have got into them. Kind of a highlight for me on that one time. It's probably been like 3-4 years ago. I took a guy and his wife from Tennessee. They flew out. They even brought their bird dog, their setter Hank, and I got him into valleys and mountain quail, which finished off his North American Slam for quail.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. And the spot we were hunting there, we actually got into valleys and mountain, and there is chucker there too. So sometimes if you find the right habitat, the species kind of intercross, so that's always exciting. But the main bird I hunt here would be chucker and quail. And I'd say most guys are quail hunters here.
Sure. And that's something I've never done. And I know you just said you're hunting in the California area and you guide as well, if I remember right.
Yeah. So a little background on me. I'm a California native, grew up here. And then when I was 18, moved to Washington for college. And I went to a small private school in Walla Walla, Washington. And in my upper years there, I got a pointing dog, and there's actually pheasants there. So we do a lot of pheasant and quail hunting. After that, worked in corporate, and then one day I saw an ad for Highland Hills Ranch in Condon, Oregon. So it's in like north central Oregon, about 2.5 hours from Portland. And anyways, I looked into it, and they're always in the Covey Rise magazines. They're a big lodge. They're Orvis endorsed. They're a Beretta Trident Lodge, and I was like, I'm going to go for it. And guided there for 2 years. Absolutely loved it. I mean, awesome place to work. Clients are great, and you get to run your dogs all day and meet really nice people. So it's really cool.
And it's a great way to like blend that passion of like the dog training side of it. Cause if you have a kennel, you train dogs,
Right.
so you have to be passionate about dog training. And a lot of people
Absolutely.
are. A lot of the upland hunters and even like the duck guys I know, we're all we all train our own dogs. I mean, so that makes it really passionate there. So when you get to let other people experience your dogs, and as long as like I always am notorious, like when I take people out, like I put way too much pressure on myself. Like I don't pressure the dog any more than I normally would, but I pressure myself like,
Right.
man, the dog screwed that up, or man, I wish the dog was doing this much better. But after the hunt's over, they're like, man, I've never hunted over that. Like, and some people have, but I'd say 75% of the people I take out are new to it because I
Right.
focus on newer people. That's what I do.
That's
And
cool.
they're like, I've never done like the dog. It's amazing. Like the dog works amazing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I focus on younger people, or like not even younger people, inexperienced people. Cause then I don't have like judging my dog because I don't know what to compare it to.
That's awesome. Yeah, you know, I mean, guiding was a great fit for me because I love people. I have a communication degree, and I love dogs. So with guiding, it's kind of a combination of those because you can't just be a really good dogman to be a guide. You also got to be a people person because it is like the entertainment industry, you know. So they really, you know, I always like kind of engage with the client and get them talking and learn their story, you know, where they're from, what they like to do, and whatnot. And then, you know, it's awesome because I get to showcase my dogs. And actually, sometimes, you know, it's not uncommon when you're guiding that, you know, the client you're guiding wants you to train their dog. So then, you know, all of a sudden, you know, that's a new client dog for you as a trainer. And it's awesome. I tell people probably think I'm lying when I say this, but I've never had a bad client guiding. I absolutely love it. I mean, I would do it in my sleep if I could.
That's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
I like you talked to, like I've got friends that are fishing guides, and it's like they're like a lot of them, like they couldn't deal with the expectations because people go there, they expect to catch fish, they expect to do this, they expect you to do that. So for you to not have a client like that's ever like been over the top, like that's awesome. Like that's great.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and maybe I don't know, maybe it's different in the industry. Maybe there's less expectation with hunting than there possibly is fish. That I don't know because I don't guide for either. But
Right.
I mean, that's a vast difference from the fishing guides I've ever talked to.
Right. So when you get hired at Highland Hills, and I can't really speak to anywhere else because I've only guided here, and I've guided like some in California, but not really. You know, I mean, I take people out like that guy from Tennessee, but he didn't pay me, so it wasn't like you know I'm doing it up in Oregon commercially. So when you get hired there, you got to have a truck, you know, a semi-newish truck, and then you got to have a string of dogs. I had both of those, and really your dogs kind of do the talking for you, and they make you. You know, you have to go out with the owner and one of the top guides there and showcase your dog before you're allowed to give in hunts, you know, because they don't, you know, people are paying a lot of money and they deserve to hunt with a well-trained dog, you know.
Sure.
So we're not like training on hunts or doing any of that, you know. So
you're guiding.
Yeah.
I mean, you're expected to have a dog that's going to perform at a certain level for for the clients you have, and that's completely understandable. Because like you said, someone's paying for this experience. Like they either can't own dogs, right, or they don't have time to train dogs, or it's not maybe necessarily their main passion, but they wanted experience. They wanted this experience.
Right.
So like that makes perfect sense, and it makes sense why the kennel would say, "Hey, you're gonna guide us today, so we can see what you're like and what your dogs were like."
Yeah, yeah. And it's cool because, you know, when you're guiding, you make a lot of connections. And some of my clients, you know, they come as a client, but in my kennel, I always say like they come as a client, but leave as a friend. And that's how guiding has been for me as well. You know, some of the guys, I'll guide them, and then the next year I guide them again, and then they bring their son, and, you know, we get a hunt, and it's really awesome experience. And then, you know, at the end when they, you know, say, I had this one guy, he always hunts there with his 3 boys. And one of his boys is buying a cocker off me because so real quick, when we guide at the ranch, we have to use pointing and flushing dogs. And some guys think that's weird, and it's really not hard. The first time you do it, your pointer like kind of turns its head and is like, what is going on? You know, like why did that dog just break point? But after a few reps, the dogs are totally acclimated to the cocker. And if anything, I think it makes the dog more steady because they have to stand there while a little furball just dives in there and blows up the covey. But going back to this one older gentleman and his 3 sons, they've hunted like all over the world, and they pulled me to the side one time, and we were hunting with my 2 older Brittany's, Zeke and Scout, and he was like, "Man, I've hunted like New Zealand, you know, all over the world, and these 2 Brittany's right here, these older Brittany's, they're like top of the food chain," and that really meant a lot to me. You know, I mean, he didn't have to say that, but it's just nice, you know. Clients will see, you know, you put a lot of time into your dogs because all of us guides do that in the off season. We're grinding, you know, we're training, we're developing our, you know, new dogs and so forth.
So you're running Brits and Cockers then?
No, I run, so a lot of guys that I work with have like one, a few of the guys like only German short hairs. I have a mix of breeds. So
Okay.
I've got Brittany's, I've got pointers, and then I have a couple young short hairs. But for the last 2 years, the main pointing breeds I've used have been Brittany's and English pointers, and then cockers for my flushing dog. I have used the lab too. But and then my two top cockers are Blue and Bubbles. Absolutely love them. They're so much fun to hunt with. And even outside of guiding, they're really good dogs to take like on a dove hunt.
All
And
right.
I've shot a bunch of quail over them too. Really, really exciting dogs to hunt with.
No, that's cool. And I really want to I don't want to like get off topic here because I really want to talk about flushers, like flushers with pointers. Because I did that grouse hunting. So I had my lab and my buddy's got an English setter.
Okay.
So, but it was real simple because his English setter's deaf. So I whistle sit. My lab was trained for duck hunting. He's the one that drove. We'll do a quick so you know where I'm coming from. My lab was extremely high strung, and he was steady, but he hated it. And he'd start to whine, and he'd want to get up and run around. And I mean, you could restudy, but he just didn't enjoy it. And on a duck hunting trip, I was with the same buddy. He goes, "Let's go hunt grouse and see how your dog does." He was phenomenal. Like,
oh wow,
he was an amazing grouse dog. Like, I knew when we hit the woods, there would not be a bird he missed. I had 100% confidence in him in those woods. And he had the helicopter tail when he'd get birdie. Like, his tail would just be perfectly flat and go back and forth as fast as it could. So it was a really exciting dog to watch too, because like you could tell when he would get birdie.
That's awesome.
So it was really cool to watch. Like, those two worked really, really well together because the setter, like, she never really retrieved. Like, it's really hard to she doesn't even recognize the gunshot, really. Like, she's born deaf. So
that's
it's
crazy.
really hard. It's really hard for her ever. Like, she doesn't retrieve. She'll go back and point dead if you push her into that area, right?
Okay.
But she's never associated a dead bird with a gunshot, ever got that retrieve excitement because she's never put that together. So like, for her, like, having bandit, like, we'd go in, like, I whistle sit bandit and we try to bust that bird. And like, if we couldn't, I'd send bandit in and she'd hold point and it was perfect. And then, or like if a bird fell, I'd send him on the retrieve. So I'm really curious to know, like, with an actual pointing dog and a flushing dog, like, what's the training process behind that to like really keep that pointing dog steady? Like, it's got to be a lot on whoa training, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, with anything dog training is a lot of repetition. I always say, that's the key to dog training is just keep doing it, keep practicing it. So your pointing dog's got to be broke, and then what you do is you just send the flusher in, and if he moves, then if the pointing dog moves or crashes, then you can give him a little nick. And every once in a while that'll happen. But the good news, if it does happen, at that point the clients are like in shooting range, so they're, even if they mess it up. But no, for the most part, my dogs, like 98% of the time, they're not moving, and the cocker goes in. And the cockers are pretty smart. Like Bubbles and Blue, they did this naturally. Sometimes you have to train it, but these guys did it naturally. When they saw a pointing dog on point, they would sit in honor.
All right.
And so, and my release command for them to go in is okay. Sometimes I'll say hunt it up or put it up, but my when I pull the trigger, it's okay. And then they just fly in there like 100 miles an hour and kick up the birds. But it's a lot faster than you think, because when most guys get hired at that lodge, they've never hunted with a flusher. I had done it like one other time with kind of like what you did, my buddy at his lab, and I had my Brits, and whatever. But I think within like 2 hunts, the dogs totally figured it out.
Got it.
So they pick up on it a lot quicker than people give them credit for.
And I really can see the advantage. I mean, that's got to be a great setup. I mean, I'm assuming do quail run? Like, I don't even know. Are quail runners, or do they pretty much like hang out in that covey?
It depends what type of quail you're hunting. But yeah, so like valley quail, those birds run. They're notorious runners. Same with Gamble's quail. But if you hop into because I've hunted all over West. I go to Arizona a lot. If you hunt like Mearns quail, those birds hold like a planted bird. And that's why a lot of guys like hunting them, because the flush is explosive, but like you can like walk up and almost step on the covey. But yeah, out in California, the quail run, and so can the chucker. Sometimes they'll hold though. And then when you're hunting valley quail, the idea is to get the covey to bust up, And if they do that, then all the birds, like the singles and the doubles, will hold really well, and your pointing dog will go around all the bushes and just start like picking them off. And
All
then
right.
if the covey's big enough, that's how you shoot your limit.
Got it.
So.
But I can see like the flushing dog, because I don't hunt a lot of pheasant. We don't have we have very, very select few areas in Wisconsin that have any wild pheasants left. So all of ours is DNR put and take. Right. I just don't really get down on that. Nothing against people that do. That's just not something that's exciting to me. Not when I have grouse up north, which are wild birds, and then I hunt woodcock a lot, and I chase that migration. So I'd much rather hunt those wild birds.
Of course.
Speaking of which, I don't know if you've ever woodcock hunted. That bird holds ridiculously tight and is fun.
Wow. I've only done snipe, not woodcock. I wish I that's on the bucket list.
So woodcock, like they hold tight, like to the point where you can have your dog have its nose less than a foot away from this bird, and you have enough time to like grab a big camera and get a picture of the two. Like that's how tight these things will hold. As long as they're not overpressured. If they're not overpressured, they just hold ridiculously tight. Like it's fun. They're fun. Like they're really fun, and they fly different too than grouse. Like because I know you said you have grouse that so they tend to fly low and fast right away. At least the grouse in the woods here, they fly low, fast. It's a really quick shooting. Like you have to have, like you got to be. It's really instinctive. You got to be fast on the gun, or you're not going to get any shots on birds really. Whereas woodcock, it's more like a helicopter. They go straight up, then out.
Awesome. Oh wow! How did it? Real quick, because you said they're migratory. Where do they migrate from? I really don't know a lot about woodcock.
So we have nesting populations in Wisconsin, but they come down from Canada, actually. They nest, a lot of them nest in Canada. And I believe they winter Louisiana. I think that's a big wintering ground for them.
I know a guy in Louisiana that hunts them. Yep.
Yeah, I think Louisiana is a big wintering ground for them. So we do have breeding population in Wisconsin, but a lot are even north of us yet.
Wow. That is so cool. You were talking about grouse. I actually have shot wild ruffed grouse. And it was in college. So I was living in Eastern Washington, and I'd hunt the Umatilla National Forest. I actually had one of my good friends in college. His dad was a game warden, and he was like, "Hey, if you go in there, there's grouse." And so that's my experience hunting rough grouse. Other than that, I haven't done it a lot, but it was fun. We shot limits, and the thing that surprised me the most is how good they tasted. They were awesome.
They're real, like it's like that reddish, but it's a white meat, right? It's a pink. I call it a pink meat. So I mean, they're phenomenal. They're delicious. Yeah. But so I actually just went out with my dog and a semi-guided for clients at work at a pheasant farm, and they still had standing corn, and these things ran, and they ran hard, and my dog struggled for most of the day. Towards the end, she was starting to figure it out, but she wasn't able to relocate on these birds. Like she'd hold point, and by the time like the bird would be 50 yards away before she'd be like, wait, where'd this bird go? Like, so she really struggled with that. Whereas I really could see a benefit between like the flusher and the pointer together, especially on running birds, because they point them, that bird gets nervous and starts to run. And by that point, you got the flusher in there and they don't have a choice anymore.
Well, because before, like I said, I grew up with a lab and had that, but then for a while I just had pointing dogs. But after guiding, at HHR, I will never not own a flushing dog because there's so many situations where they have advantages. We've got this one valley quail spot here in California that me and my dad like to hunt, and it's really better with a flushing dog, that particular spot, because the birds hang in a tree line and there's like a little creek in there where they get water, and you put one hunter on the other side and a hunter on the opposite side, and you just walk the tree line, but it's so thick that if your dog goes on point in there, it's like, how are you gonna get them? You got to get the birds out. So that you just send the tunnel rat in.
So that's hunting woodcock in a nutshell. Yeah. I mean, it's that super thick cover where, I remember hunting with that my buddy. He was telling me a story. He's like, I couldn't get my dog to break point. I couldn't get it in there to flush. I couldn't get it in there. I was starting to throw sticks underneath like this tree to try to get this bird to break, because his dog would not break point. This woodcock would not flush. And he goes, I don't know what to do.
Well, get a cocker. Get a cocker snail.
So that's the key, the pointer and the flusher. Yeah. And I have hunted over that combo just like with him. So I really do see the benefits of it, especially what you're saying, like with that thicker cover at times too.
Oh yeah, if you're like I said, I've never had a woodcock, but after hearing what you just told me, oh man, a cocker would be just perfect for that. So
I have
yeah,
not hunted over a cocker. That is not a dog I have hunted over. I have seen
okay.
some of your videos though, and man, they look like an exciting dog to watch.
Yeah, they're super fun. They're real animated. I mean, they just have an exciting personality. And they're really nice dogs. They're kind of like a miniature lab almost, and like how I think of it. I describe it to someone. But they can go a long time. Like my cockers, they get hunted hard and they go every day. And because they're little, I think there's less wear and tear on them than like a bigger dog.
Sure,
Um, and they're good retrievers. They like the water, very biddable. You don't even have to run them with collars. I do because when I'm guiding and hunting, I actually don't even really talk to my dogs. I just hit the tone button, and that's like all I do. I let
sure.
them. I don't micromanage my dogs. I let them be a dog and hunt. Um, but yeah, no, they're fun. I mean, I've got Bubbles and Blue. They're my like seasoned veteran cockers, and then I have two young ones. I have Candy and Coco. And so yeah, um, that's what I got for cockers.
So, how many dogs are you running at your kennel then? How many dogs are you guiding with?
So I have 14 total dogs, but I'm guiding with I'm guiding with 10 pointing dogs, and then two Bubbles and Blue, my two cockers. Candy and Coco I'm not guiding with yet. They're not ready.
All
Coco's
right,
almost there. So the big thing with cockers, you can guide with them at a young age. The one thing, in my opinion, that they have to kind of pass before you can start putting them on hunts and everything is you got to gun break them. So once they're kind of cool with the gun, it's like, okay, time to hunt. Because what's expected of them is less than like a pointing dog, right? And they hunt
sure.
so close. So because our pointing dogs, good, like one of my good female pointers, I was guiding with her at like 6, 7 months old. But typically it's about a year when I really like, I really guide him as like a primary dog. But I mean, Blue, my cocker Blue, I was guiding with him at 6 months old. So he
Wow,
was he was an exceptional dog. Yeah, he was real. That video you saw of him, I think he was like 6 or 7 months in that video.
that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
at the end of guide season last year, him and Bubbles turned a year, like right as like the season was ending. They weren't even a year old.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah,
That's awesome.
so yeah. So
So
um
hunting those quail out west, like where you
mm,
are, what
yep.
type of ranges are your dogs running? Like, I'm assuming this is big country.
So, like for quail, not as big as you think. Like
All
I
right.
wasn't hunting today, but I was I was running dogs on wild birds without a gun. But when I'm quail hunting, I don't really want them over 300 yards. They
Okay, that's
usually
huge for me. Like that's huge
is
fucking
it
for me. Oh yeah.
okay. Yeah, because you're in the woods, so that's
Right.
that's like your
Right.
dog disappears. Yeah.
Oh, they'll disappear after 40 where we hunt.
Okay, I see. Yeah. So like today, I think a couple of my pointers are at 300 yards, but the sweet spot for me for quail is around, I don't know, like 75 to 200 yards. There's been a few times where my big running pointers will take off, and then in the corner of my eye, like 50 yards, my Brittany's on point. So it's like, um, but yeah. So about that's the range for quail. Now Chucker's a different story. Chucker, my best chucker dogs are my pointers, and when I say pointers, I'm referring to English pointers, but I usually just call them pointers. And I let them roll. In fact, I don't. I just they've got the Garmin's on them, and once that tells me they're on point, that's really when the hunt starts.
All right.
So yeah,
So they're what, 500, 600
they
yards?
can be. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's I have a few pictures of my pointers last year, and it took us like me and my buddy, we're in pretty good shape, and it took us about like 5 minutes to get to them, and we're like climbing up a hill, and then right when we get there, we kind of flick our safeties off, and then the birds erupt, and it's so exciting.
You're out of breath. You're trying
Yeah,
to steady
yeah,
yourself.
yeah. So, and that's with my older dogs too. If I'm training or working a young dog, with trust comes freedom. So like, if a puppy's like at like 700 yards, they're just running and they're going to blow up birds and whatever. And that's okay. Like, I let a puppy be a puppy, right? I don't put
Sure.
like, I'm not guiding with a puppy. It's okay. I let them develop and grow up. But yeah, to answer your question, and sometimes if you're hunting like mountain quail, the cover can be pretty thick. We've got like a lot of manzanita, so it just depends. But I would say generally for quail, 200 yards is like a good,
All right.
where they should be at. Yeah.
All right. So I know you said you had your big run in EP, and then do you like to hunt two different styles like that also? Like, do you like to hunt a big running dog with a closer running dog?
I do, and I got that idea from this older gentleman. He's still alive. He's a big author. His name's Benno Williams, and he writes for Covey Rise. He's got some awesome books, and that was kind of his method of the madness was Brittany's and pointers. And so I kind of, I had Brittany's, and I got my Brittany when I was in college. At that time I thought you had to have own a ranch to have an English pointer. Turns out you don't, because I don't have a ranch. But that was kind of my perception, and so that's what I like. Now out here in California, by far, if you're wild bird hunting and you encounter another hunter, 8 to 9 out of 10 times they're gonna have a German short hair. And
Sure.
Most of my client dogs are German short hairs. Like this summer I got a few Brittany's, and I do have a couple short hairs. And one of the big reasons for that, there's a lot of reasons, but one thing I do like about that breed is their coat. With my Brittany's, unfortunately, I have to shave them a lot, and those you don't have to do anything,
Sure.
So, but I'll always run either Brittany's and pointers or a short hair with a pointer. I just love that. Yeah, one's your wide receiver and one's kind of your your mid range dog, and that way you're finding all the birds in the sector you're hunting.
No, that makes sense. And one thing I've also, from my limited experience with GSPs, they kind of remind me of labs in their trainability.
Yes. I totally agree. So it's funny because I own two short hairs. Really like them. They're really nice dogs. But it's funny because most of the dogs I've trained, just in general, the most amount are German short hairs. And I totally agree with that. They're usually pretty bold. They'll meet you halfway. But what I've also noticed is because the breed has gotten so popular, there's a lot of different, I call them subspecies of German, a lot of different types of short hairs. You can get a field trial one, a NAVDA one, and they all have their perks, right?
Right,
some run big, but they might maybe not retrieve as well or like the water. And I'm generalizing. So I don't make anybody mad by saying, but that's just my experience. I've trained some NAVDA ones that are pretty versatile, but they might, not range as big. So, but there's a couple short hair breeders here in my area that I get a lot of dogs from, and I own actually a dog from each of the two kennels I'm kind of referring to, and they're awesome. So, it's a breed I actually really like.
Because I've kind of had that conversation before, because I own a Griff now, and I've talked to other Griff owners that have started with GSPs, and we all kind of agree we wouldn't recommend a Griff to be a first dog, not for training.
Right.
I've
never trained one.
They're very, very unique in that they're smart to the point they're stubborn, but they're soft. They train very soft. So the best way I heard it was from a very experienced Griff trainer. He said, you have to have a heavy hand and a white glove. So you have to be super, super consistent, but you can't put pressure with that consistency.
Right.
So it's a very unique style of training, I would say. And I've talked to other Griff owners, and we've all on the same page. I wouldn't recommend this for your first hunting dog. I wouldn't. I love my Griff. I love her. But if I would have started with this dog, I would have hopefully been smart enough to get a lot of help, or I would have screwed it up.
Wow. Yeah, I've never trained one, and I was talking to an older trainer one time, and he told me about a Griff that you can't really make as many mistakes as you can with a short hair. He's like, if you make a mistake with this breed, there's no coming back. I don't know. I've never trained one, so I have zero experience with that breed. There was a guy my first year guiding that had Griffs and poodle pointers. He was an avid NAVDA guy, and so he had one time I hunted with him. So I have hunted with a Griff one time, but yeah, you don't see too many of those out here, at least in California. I think if you go to the Northwest, where I guide, there's more of them there.
Sure. And that makes sense though, because they're not known to be a big ranging dog. Now, other Griffs out there that range, yes, there are. What really drove me to the Griff was that there are closer working dogs. So for the grouse, that's why I really got like really went to this breed, because I wanted a closer working dog just for the cover we hunt and things like that. Now, can a GSP, like, is it easy to make a dog hunt closer than it is to push him farther? Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like you can always reel a dog in. It's very hard to give him more confidence to push out or completely change what the breed standard is. Right.
Right.
So you got to know that going into it, that it's a closer working breed. That's just what they are naturally.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, you know, what was I was gonna ask you something about those. What's the most popular breed of hunting dog you guys see out there for pointing dog?
So, like with a lot of the pheasant hunters, and that's a GSP. I'd say that for sure. It's GSP.
So it's like here. Okay.
Yeah. So, but like I know a lot of people. And maybe it's because I own a Griff. I know a lot of Griff owners in Wisconsin. I know a lot of Drathar owners. I know a couple of Drathar breeders. I know I know more than a handful of guys running German wired hair pointers. And I don't know if it's just because I'm so focused in the wired hair world currently, because I own one but then again, I know there's a great Brittany kennel here, and I've talked with him. I've seen his dogs work, phenomenal dogs. So, I mean, there's a lot of Brittany's as well. I mean, but I would say probably GSPs for pointing dogs, but you see a lot of labs. You see a ton of labs.
Oh yeah. That's America's dog.
Right.
Yeah.
But for grouse hunting, it's pretty rare I run into other hunters. I mean, I ran into one this year. I ran into a couple this year. One had an English pointer that found us at the road, and he was about 800 yards in the other direction. We walked her back to the truck for him.
Yeah.
Which was a whole unique search. Like, that was a really unique situation. So I rescued my dog at 6 years old. She is not good with other dogs. She will hunt with that English that my buddy's setter. She'll hunt with her, like they get along, but 90% of other dogs, it's a no-go. Like, it's a fight. Like, she is very aggressive towards other dogs. So I don't hunt her around a lot of other dogs, obviously. But like,
so you can't hunt her with another dog.
You can, but you got to get them into the field quickly, so her focus switches to birds right away. Because if you're sitting around, hanging around at the tailgates of the truck, I'll keep her in the kennel, because that's just a fight waiting to happen for her. Like, I mean, she has some issues. I wouldn't say she was abused, but I would put it towards more maybe neglected.
Okay.
So, but she's good. She's getting better. She probably won't. I won't own another dog with her, though. That's for sure.
Okay.
So
I've hunted. Yeah. I've hunted with German wire hairs. A couple of my buddies have them, and that was kind of my only beef with the breed. They're good dogs. They found a lot of birds. They're good quail dogs. And they were even good trial, because I run Nastra too in the off season.
Sure.
And but the two I'm referring to, they were aggressive, and not even just dog aggressive. They're human aggressive. So I found that kind of concerning, but I see why people like them though too. So
So I do know, like, compared to Griffs, German wired hairs tend to be more on the aggressive side than Griff. Mine's pretty rare. Most Griffs are not aggressive. From the Griffs I've met, most of them are really not. Me neither. So I know the German wired hair is a little more stubborn, like the Drathars. They're a little more hard driving, a little hardier than the Griff. They're all unique. They're so similar, but they're all unique, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I always tell people if I lived in like Alaska, I'd probably have that, but
I will say this: you touched base on the coat and how nice it is for like the GSP and all that. The wire hair coat is a mess.
Oh,
because you don't cut it, you don't shave it, you hand strip it.
Oh, wow. How long does that take to do?
So I use a Mars Coat King, and I'll do a really, really good stripping before the season, which is like 30, 45 minutes, just sitting in the kitchen, just pulling hair out of her. But then it's a solid, like when I had my lab, because we have a lot of ticks, like tons of ticks where we hunt. Like After a hunt, you always got to do a tick check. With my lab, it was like 5 minutes, and I was inside drinking whiskey or beer, right?
Yeah.
Between burrs and ticks and everything else, I have literally spent 30 or 40 minutes on the back of the truck cleaning up my dog.
Oh no, I believe it. You know, we're all after guiding, we're always pulling, you know, cockle burrs out of our cockers. I usually shave my Brittany's. And I found out if you need to shave a dog, buy a good razor because it's a lot quicker. But I remember one time I was just like, I spent like, you know, a couple hours like shaving 2 of my Brittany's because we were going to a trial the next day. And, you know, if I ever move, I'll always have pointers forever because I really like how they hunt. But if I ever were to kind of shy from Brittany's, it's not because I don't like them. I love them actually, but it's just that coat. I actually got a Brittany right here next to me. He sleeps under my bed. But that's kind of the only thing. But you know, like if you're in like when I hunt in Montana, I saw a lot of Brittany's, like a lot.
Sure.
In California, I've encountered Brittany's mostly shorters, but when I go to the trial, that's where you'll see pointers and setters out here. But really, that's the only time I see other breeds. But yeah, you know, they're all cool. I love them. I just love dogs.
Agreed. And I like hunting over different breeds too, because they all kind of have a unique style, and every dog's got an individual style, but there's kind of that breed standard, if you want to call it a standard, right? Then everyone's unique in a way.
Well, absolutely. And when we're guiding at HHR, you know, you're guiding for 6 months out of the year, and I like to look at different things. So, you know, sometimes in the morning on my up top hunts, I'll be like, all right, I'm going to run long tails and all my pointers. And I have an old setter, so sometimes he'll go out too. And then, you know, down in the thick cover when we do our Milo pheasant hunts, I'll, you know, that's all I'll be running my Brittany's. And I might throw a 1 pointer in there just to kind of mix it up. But when we're guiding, minimum, I'm always running at least 3 dogs, 2 pointers, 1 flesher. And then the maximum I'll run is 5 dogs. I've sometimes ran 3 pointing dogs and 2 fleshing dogs, and that's a lot of fun. It just depends what part of the ranch we're hunting and how many hunters I have. And then usually when I'm, you know, down in California hunting, at least 2 to 3 pointing dogs always.
Sure.
So, yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. And having 14 dogs, you're able to switch them out, and you're able to like really put a lot of time in the field.
Yeah, and I tell people if I didn't guide full time for half the year, I would not have 14. I'd have like 6 dogs.
All right.
So, but the only reason I have that many is because if you're guiding and you have a dog get hurt, you don't want to overrun them, and you know sometimes most of their injuries they recover from, but they need time to rest. And the worst thing to do is to go, you know, your dog like hurt its leg or something, and then go keep running it. So that's, you know, people when they, especially down in California, I tell them how many dogs I have, they think I'm crazy, but then I'm like, hold on, like let me explain, you know, because back in the early days I only had 3 dogs and I ran them hard. You know, I ran them really, really. I don't run dogs that hard anymore. Like that, you know, I swap them out for a new one.
Right.
So yeah,
but, I mean, it's hard on the dog, right? It's hard on the joints. It's hard on everything. I mean,
yeah,
it's hard on the pad. It's hard on the paws. It's.
Yep. And usually, like sometimes when you're, like when I took that guy out from Tennessee, his dog came out here and blew all his pads, and you know, sometimes like when I first started going up to Oregon, some of my dogs blew their pads, but then 2 weeks later, the pads really calloused up. So I don't boot my dogs. And if I'm hunting the Mojave Preserve, I'll boot them. But other than that, I never boot my dogs, and their pads are really conditioned because of it.
Sure, that makes sense. And I really don't boot mine unless we get really hard icy snow.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean even towards the end of this, I mean obviously it snows at the end of the season for us, and even after she's been running hard, and now we're running woods. I mean there's sticks, there's like rocks, but I mean it's nothing like running like desert or anything like that. It's not nearly as that type of terrain, but that when you get like deep snow's fine, soft snow's fine, but when you get that ice crusted snow, like if I don't boot her, like you'll look down and all of a sudden there'll be blood all over the ground, and she didn't like rip her pads off. She's actually cut her pads, and a lot of times like it'll ball up and freeze, and it'll actually like cut inside the pad, like in between the toes, and she'll keep running. Like she won't stop. I have to stop her.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, even like down in California, we don't really have a winter, but in Oregon, our winter is not like for a guy like you wouldn't consider it a winter. Like we do get snow, but there's like 2 guys I work with. One guy's from Iowa, the other guy's from New York, and like they're like, this really isn't a winter. You know, like well, it'll be cold for about 6-7 weeks maybe, And then, but not, like I think the coldest I ever got in was like 16 degrees. It's usually like, on the colder end, 20, 30. But right now up there, it's pretty hot. The low's only like 45, which is pretty warm for up there right now.
So like to put it in perspective, like I always hold grouse camp in October, either the second or third week. So this year it was hot. It was in the 70s.
Oh, that's hot.
Which that like 60s, 70s, like it's hot. It was really hot because when you start to get to those temperatures, the dogs start to get hot. It gets to the point where their tongue never goes back in their mouth and they're just puffing and puffing so hard they're no longer using their noses. But the year before, it was lows in like the single digits with highs in the teens.
In October?
Yes.
Wow.
And like all the lakes froze up, the rivers were freezing, and then we were getting fresh snow every single day.
That's crazy.
And I didn't bring boots or anything. Like I didn't even think about it. It's October. I'm not going to need.
Yeah.
So I'm driving to like and we're up north in the middle of Wisconsin, and there's like nothing around. I finally found a feed store that had boots, and I'm like, it didn't matter what they were going to work, and they worked it great. I've actually bought more pairs after that of the same company. But I mean, it was just crazy. Like that's just how crazy our weather can be here, where we can have like I have pictures where woke up in the morning and like all the trees are covered in ice from the steam coming off the lake still.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. And I would agree, like when you were saying hunting in the 70s, that's hot because when you're hiking around, as you're building up body heat. So like my favorite temps to hunt in are like 40s with the breeze. Like today when I was out running my dogs, it was like 47 degrees with the breeze. It was awesome.
See, I'd agree, mid 40s. Like once you start to get 50s, even like a long sleeve shirt starts to get hot, right? I mean, you want to almost be down to a t-shirt at that point, but I won't hunt where I hunt in a t-shirt because you're going to be bloody.
Yeah, with all the trees and branches.
Right.
Yeah.
And like for woodcock, it's a lot of buckthorn. Like I wear leather gloves because I'm constantly moving buckthorn out of my way. And I don't know if you've ever dealt with buckthorn.
Have not.
It's actually poisonous. So if you get stuck hard enough, like you'll have a reaction to it.
Ooh.
A coworker got stuck in his knuckle, and his knuckle swelled up to the point he couldn't move it.
Wow.
Yeah. So buckthorn's nasty, and woodcock love it. They like you find good buckthorn with some wet ground, like some moist ground, you'll find woodcock. So it's that stuff, and it can beat the dogs up pretty good too. I'm sure. Like I'm sure you can tell.
Well, so in that type of terrain and hunting, you're probably better off with like a long hair dog, right? Or not necessarily.
My lab didn't get any more beat up than my Griff did. Yeah.
But you probably couldn't run a pointer in that. You couldn't run a pointer in that, could you?
Guys do it all the time. And
they don't get beat up?
Oh, I'm sure they do. But there's plenty of times I've watched both my dogs come out with blood all over their faces. Oh, eyes all red, tongue, like I have so many pictures of my lab with his tongue hanging out, looking at me, smiling, blood's just like dripping off his tongue from his tongue being so cut up from running through there.
Yeah, they're so tough.
Right. It's just that terrain that does. But I'm sure you got trained out by you that's got like rough on the pads and everything else. It's just different situations.
Yeah, I found the Mojave Preserve to be a tough place, and so the Mojave Preserve's in California. It's kind of on your way like to Vegas, from LA to Vegas, and that is a spot I've booted my dogs. And then the other spot, so I love to hunt Arizona because that's right next door.
Sure.
And there's a reservation that a lot of the guys hunt, and that is tough on the dogs. It's not really tough on us because we got our boots, and some of the guys will actually wear like gaiters. There is like cactus order, but it's not like as steep as like chucker hunting, so it's not like like older guys can do it and whatnot. But like all my Arizona buddies, man, their dogs get, they have really good dogs, and we have similar dogs and we breed our dogs together and whatnot, but their dogs, man, they take good care of their dogs, but just from the hunting, they really get beat up compared to California. The terrain out in California, other than the Mojave Preserve, is really not that bad. It's nice. The ideal spots I like to hunt quail in are rolling like sagebrush, and you can see your dog, and it's beautiful, and it's not too thick. So.
Well, that's cool too, because then you actually get to really watch your dogs work.
Exactly. There's a lot of spots that have a lot of quail, but it's just like so thick, or like, there'll be stuff in like Arizona that's just tons of cholla, and there might be a million birds in there, but you don't really want to hunt there because it's just like, it's just, I don't know. There's just certain types of terrain I like to hunt in. So,
Sure. No, that makes
um,
sense. And that's
yeah.
probably why there's more birds there though, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
There's
And,
more
and
birds there
chucker,
because
yeah. No, no, absolutely. Chucker terrain can be brutal. Actually, quick little story on that. Last year, I was hunting with Sky and Nelly, and Nelly fell off a cliff,
holy
and
cow.
like right in front of me, she jumped, and I don't think she realized there wasn't ground in her, at least, and she just fell all the way down, and she bounced like a tennis ball, and there's nothing I could do, and she was totally fine. But had she been a bigger dog, I mean, that might have been her last hunt.
Like how high was this cliff?
It was pretty high. I don't know how high, but it was me and the guy I hunt with all the time. We looked and we just saw it, and our mouths dropped, and we're like, "Oh, I hope this works out." And she kind of landed like a cat. And I waited, and I didn't even give her Remedal because I wanted to see if she'd like swell up, and she was totally fine. But
That's
she's a real light-footed dog. She's about 40 pounds, real
okay.
lean pointer. So had that been my other pointer, Sky, that she's a little bit bigger. She's kind of a thicker dog. That might have not ended so well.
That's crazy. And like completely off,
Yeah.
like just like free fall.
Yeah. Like she jumped, like she was at the top, and she jumped thinking there was like land there, but there wasn't. There was, but a lot further down.
Right.
And yeah, out west, that's an issue if you're a chucker hunter. A lot of guys, they'll be chucker hunting, and I know a few guys, and their dogs have, fell off a cliff. And on the flip side of that, though, I've gotten down cliffs while I'm chucker hunting. This actually happened in Nevada, and I was trying to figure a way down this cliff, and I actually used my dogs to figure it out. They knew the path, so I just kind
Interesting.
of followed the dogs. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
the type of terrain I'm not familiar with at all. Like I feel like I'd get out there and be like, I am not prepared for this.
yeah. It takes a lot of times. I met this one guy I chucker hunted with once, and he was kind of retired early, and he chucker hunts like 100 days out of the year, and I went with him, and that was probably like 5 years ago. And it was an awesome experience. There was antelope everywhere. If I could, I would just chucker hunt all day. I mean, it's my favorite. It's awesome. And I think it's like the ultimate test for a dog, because some of my other dogs that are good at quail and pheasant, they're not as good as chucker as my chucker dogs.
Got it.
So, yeah.
Got it. So do you
It
ride for
takes a
all like
special dog.
got it. Oh, I get it. I mean, different terrain, tougher.
Right.
So do you guide for all three then? Like do you guide for quail,
So,
chucker, and
well,
pheasant?
actually more than yeah, and actually one more hunt. So when we're guiding at HHR at Highland Hills Ranch, there's quail, there's chucker, there's hun, and there's pheasants.
Got it.
So yeah, and then but then I chase other birds too. Like I love to hunt merns. I don't guide for merns, but I just personally do that, and
Sure.
so yeah,
So do you pick favorite dogs then? Like when you're
I
going out
do.
for your own hunts, you're taking your special like the ones that have just a little bit more special place to you.
Yes, absolutely. So like my Brittany that's here in my room right now, if we're going on a Mearns quail hunt or any type of quail hunt, like he's like on the team.
Sure.
That's just like he's just awesome, and he really does really good at Mearns, and also Valleys. Valleys is kind of like his home bird. That's what he grew up on, Valley quail. And then when I'm like chucker hunting, so last year, I around this time actually, I went to Hell's Canyon, and absolutely, I had hunted Hell's Canyon before, but it's a big area. Saying Hell's Canyon is just kind of like a general term. It's a big area, so this time I hunted a completely different side of it, and I actually only took my pointers,
Okay.
and we got into chucker and huns, which is pretty cool. But they're I have found that their nose is the most powerful, and someone probably argue me on that, but just in my experience, the pointers have a really powerful nose, and you need that for chucker. You can't be too close to them, or they're gonna they'll bust.
Sure.
And they really just figure it out. There's the only way to really practice for chucker hunting, you just got to go. No, you can practice all you want with pigeons or planet birds, but to be a chucker dog, in my opinion, is a special dog. And that's actually why I got into pointers, because I had some successful hunts with my Brits on chucker, but I knew there might be a little bit better out there. And to me, the pointer is kind of like the Formula One of bird dogs. They are the. So
Sure. No.
um,
And And I get it. Wild birds teach dogs, right? And if you, I mean,
Yes.
Chucker
Yes.
kind of reminds me about it kind of reminds me of like with grouse, to be honest, because you can't
Right.
overpressure grouse or they'll blow out. Like
Right.
it takes a special dog. Like, and my dog blows plenty of points. Like, she's by far not perfect on grouse. Like, she's still trying to figure out grouse. Cause I mean, you only can put so much pressure on those. They don't hold. Especially when you hunt higher pressured areas, they are
Right.
quick to fly away.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. So with Chucker, I mean, the first time I went to Hell's Canyon was about 4 years ago. And I had my Brit was my older dog, and Sky at the time was like 8 months old, I think. So it was kind of at the end of her first season. And she bumped one covey, and I didn't say anything. I didn't shock her. But I was like, please don't do this all day, because when you're chucker hunting, it's like you can actually hunt chucker in flatter areas. People don't realize that. And the more you spend time chucker hunting, you'll actually start to hunt areas that aren't as hard, because you can still get birds. But this particular hunt was very steep. And after she blew one covey, that's all she needed, and she was dialed in. And the
That's
rest of the
awesome.
day, the Garmin would go off. We would find her right when we'd get to her. We'd flick the safety off, and birds would get up. It was awesome.
Nice.
And she's like, she's on my business card for a reason. I mean, she is. Yeah, I really like hunting with her. Yeah.
But I mean, it's amazing when like it just clicks for a dog, right? I mean, and like it just clicked there. And I've seen that with my dogs before too, where like all of a sudden it just clicks and they get it. Now, my Griff likes to forget. Like,
yeah.
And she's 10. I got her at 6. I mean, I'm very happy with what I was able to make from her, especially because hunting wasn't my first priority with her. It was behavioral issues. I mean, that's what I focused on first, because there was other things other than just dog aggressiveness. So, I mean, that was our first thing. It was behavioral issues, and hunting took a backseat to it, other than making sure she had really good obedience, and we're just going to run you on birds and let you figure it out. And because she loved chase birds, like she's got great bird drive. So, I mean, that was kind of like a release, like for her. And so I never really I still don't I expect a lot out of her. I do, just because I expect a lot out of me at the same time. Right.
Yeah.
But I don't actually she'll bust birds, and I'll be like disappointed, but I don't actually ever correct her on it, because she's 10. I mean, she really is what she's going to be. I mean,
she is who she is at that age. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So I take it for what it is. And really what it is she'll have really, really great days where it's like, oh my God, we finally got it. We figured it out. We'll go out the next day, and it's like, she forgot everything that happened the day before. I'm like, what just happened here? I've watched her have phenomenal, steady through the shot retrieves, gorgeous points. I actually have a woodcock I'm going to get mounted for that. It was perfect point, shot, steady, retrieve. And then the next day, she'll completely miss birds. I'll be walking and she'll have already gone through the area, and I'll bump the bird. I'm like, you just came through here. How did you not, what happened? Or she'll completely chase a running grouse and just get 60 yards out and just push it, and they'll bust. I'm like, what happened to what happened to pointing? Did you forget? You're not a flushing dog. But I just take the good with the bad with her, because I mean, at the end with her, I know I gave her an amazing home, and she's loving the rest of her life. And that's all I really care about with her. So.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And, every dog, develops differently, or can have little quirks or different nuances, but yeah, that's one thing I really liked about the pointers is in the pointing department, they just love to point. That's, because one of the biggest issues, especially young hunters will have, is their dog's not holding point, right? And a puppy, that's okay. When I take out a young dog, I don't if I'm gonna go hunt with my friends or whatever, or a bunch of people or guide, that's with finished dogs and whatever. Because if I'm taking out my puppy, it's more of a training session, and it's not really about the hunt in terms of killing birds. And so, I was just mentoring a guy that bought a pointer for me, and I'm like, hey, if she blows a covey, don't shoot at them, because you're rewarding bad behavior,
Right.
And it'll just click. And in my experience, I found sometimes the and this is just general, but the females can mature. I have 2 pointers in my kennel. They're brother and sister, and I always thought the sister was better until like 2 months ago. Her brother just totally changed, and he matured, and he's good. And going back to why I hunt with different breeds, I couldn't just ever only hunt with just pointers, because the one kind of I have seen some pointers that like this, but unfortunately mine don't. They don't do anything in the water. So mine retrieve really good, and most of the spots we hunt don't have water, but some do. So that's why I always take a Brit or a short hair with me, because they're versatile and they'll do that too. So, or you could take the cocker, I guess. They like the water as well. So
it makes sense. And
yeah.
Do your pointers like to retrieve? I mean,
they love to retrieve. Phenomenal retrieve. If you actually just not water. So if you I have a pool at my house. If you throw it in the dead bird or whatever in the pool, they're not about that. But on land, phenomenal retrievers. And as a good chucker, when I was getting into pointers, I was either short hair pointer, right? I couldn't decide. And to me, I'm really, really big on retrieving. Even if my dogs have a really good natural retrieve, which most of them do, and I actually breed for that, because I understand like some of my buyers, they're not going to force fetch their dog, or they might not pay a trainer or whatever. So I'm really big on that natural retrieve. And I cultivate it at a young age, and I use a dead bird, and I'll use a doken. But then after they've had their first hunting season, I do force fetch them still.
Sure.
Because I want the complete package. So
right.
Yeah, and I'm big on retrieving.
No, that makes sense. I mean, the retrieve is half of it to me. I mean,
absolutely.
I want a dog. I mean, not only is the point, but the retrieve. To me, like they go hand in hand. They really do. And that's like that. This year, that was a huge step with my Griff.
Okay.
Like she's always had a strong retrieve drive, but she's always been hesitant to put birds in her mouth. And that was something we worked on. And this year I can think of only one time, and it was a super shot up woodcock that she wouldn't retrieve. She retrieved everything this year. So, I mean, yeah, we might have not had some good points, but like her retrieve was amazing. So it was a super exciting season for that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, definitely. And one thing I've kind of noticed, I know you got her at 6, but when I'm cultivating the retrieve, I'll do it when they're little, and I won't overdo it obviously, but I like to do it with a freshly killed bird sometimes, because I've noticed, I have one of my pointers, right? She retrieved great with the bumper, great with the doken, but then I went and shot birds over her, and she didn't retrieve them. So I was like, oh, it's not good. So then I went back to the yard and took a frozen bird and just replaced the bumper with a frozen chucker, I think, and just started doing that. And so I'm really to me, I totally agree with you. And when we're guiding, I don't pick up any birds. That's my dog's job. So they dead bird hunt, they retrieve, and they all have natural holds. I like them to hold it right, to hand, and then I pull the bird out.
Sure. So, and that's part of the experience for the clients, right? They want that entire package also. Not only as us as dog trainers and hunters, it's always great to watch your dog get that point, steady the shot, the retreat. It's always great when everything clicks, but it's another level of expectations for people that are paying for it.
Well, one of my favorite things that happens when guiding, I absolutely love when this happens, is the birds will get up, right? Your dog's on point, you send the cocker in, and we'll be kind of near not really a cliff, but down a steep mountain, just down a draw or whatever, but we'll be on top. And the birds get up, the clients shoot them, but they wing a bird. And the bird just sails down. And I can see my pointer Sky is a phenomenal bird. My pointer Sky and Scout, my Brit, and then Blue, my cocker, are just phenomenal at marking birds. And they will mark a bird and go hundreds of yards down a draw. And when they come back up, and it looks like they got the football in their mouth, it makes you look really good. The client, they're they thought we totally lost the bird. They're not going to go hike down to get that. That's why we got the dog. And it's probably one of the things that makes you look really good as a guide. So
it's also proud too, because that shows now there's natural talent there, right? Because they mark birds really well. But it's also the training, it's also the experience that you've given them, and the constant just that much work in the field where they have that experience and the confidence also to go chase that bird for 300 yards and not give up.
Yeah. No, it's the training. the environment, and then a big part of all that. And I tell this to people too, especially my clients, and I get them usually from referrals from breeders, which is nice. But with all these bird dogs, it's all about like genetics. If you have a really, really well bred dog, they're, if anything else, you get a really intelligent dog, and they really want to please you. And for the most part, I found them to be just bold retrievers. I like a bold dog. You know,
Sure.
so, but yeah, so.
No, man, it's always about the dogs for me, right? I wouldn't
Yes,
like
yeah.
I wouldn't if I didn't have dogs, I wouldn't be an upland hunter. I'd be a deer hunter. Like I
Oh, 100%. Yeah, upland hunting without a dog. I've never done that. I don't think I'll ever do that. That's, for me, it's all about the dog. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like shooting birds too. And I'm sure, you meet different types of hunters. Like I got some buddies that they love killing birds, right? And
right.
and whatever, but I'm not really that way. And I think if that was my main drive, like I probably wouldn't be as into the outdoors and hunting as I am. Uh, because for me it goes beyond that. I just love watching good dog work. I mean, I love it. So,
And I think that's pretty consistent with like a lot of people that I've started to like that I associate with, right? It's more
right.
about the dog work than it is limits. And I don't know, maybe I've matured because like when I first started duck hunting, it was all about tailgate picks with limits of greenheads, right?
Right,
But
right.
eventually that kind of all switched to, and like what I've really like what I base the show about, and it doesn't matter if it's bird hunting or deer hunting or any type of hunting, really, it's about the experience. Because it's really, to me, it's about that entire experience. It's about, like for duck hunting, watching the sunrise, watching birds work the decoys, or upland hunting, watch dogs figure out the scent, and then watch how the bird flies in the woods, or like for you out in the rolling
Absolutely.
hills. And it's
Yeah.
that entire experience to me. And if I don't actually like, if my shooting is subpar that day and I don't actually get a bird in my game bag, that's okay. Like I'm 100% okay with that, because at that I still got to watch like the woods wake up, or my dog work a field or work woods or something. I always like there's more to it to me than just having a bird to come home to clean.
Oh, for absolutely. No, I totally agree. Cutting the dogs loose, letting them work, following them on the Garmin, and hunting different areas. And for me, it's just like it's all about the experience. And I've kind of grown as a hunter too. Like I really only like hunting like really pristine areas at this point. So I'll drive further to do that. Yeah, I can get
Sure.
in birds a little bit closer, but I really like I call them like level 10 places where like there's this one place in Arizona I hunt and you'll get into quail and everything, but there could be like deer and elk and then javelinas show up. Those are kind of scary, but yeah, those can hurt your dog. But I thankfully I haven't had that happen. But it's just you get like all of you just get a lot of wildlife out here in California. When you're almost not every quail hunt, but a lot of my better quail hunts, there's usually always like a bobcat lurking around that I'll find because he's hunting them too. And
Sure.
so when you for me, like if I see a lot of times too, and before I'll cut the dogs loose, I'll look in the sky, and if I can see hawks flying around, I'm like, all right, there's birds over there, and so we'll go. And yeah, so
Makes sense. Use the natural predators out there that you can see.
yeah, 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 definitely. If you find predators, they're hunters too, so
Right.
they're yeah.
No,
So
that's awesome. I'm going to give you the next few minutes. You can let everyone know how to find you on social media. Let them know what your kennel name is, especially anybody on the West Coast that's looking for dog training or anything like that.
okay.
Shout out where you guide. Give the show's yours, man.
Okay. So I got at Highland Hills Ranch in Condon, Oregon, for half the year. It's the Orvis wing shooting guides. It's Orvis endorsement Beretta Trident Lodge, and then in California, I run a kennel. My kennel name is called Wild Covey Kennels. If you got a bird dog and you need training, I also do private sessions as well. But most of the clients just drop off their dogs. But if you need help with training or gun breaking, bird introduction, any of that stuff, that's my passion, and I've got a lot of experience now doing that. And we just love to have people come out. So and we've been really busy, really really busy. If you're looking for certain products, and I'm not sponsored by anybody, but I highly recommend, especially to all my puppy buyers, have Garmin collars for your dogs. And then as of dog food, I really like Purina dog food. I fed a lot of different dog foods. And like I said, I'm not sponsored by any of these guys, but they're just products I use like every day. And, they definitely make a difference.
Sure, absolutely. I'm a big fan of the Purina as well. I've been feeding that for like 15 years now. So, and and
Yeah.
in those 15 years, I've varied, right? Like I've tried other things here and
Right.
there, but
Right.
I think for the past 6 now, I haven't varied again. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't, I used to vary all the time, and once I started guiding professionally and, I'm feeding the kennel dogs, I really, because as a guide, you really, before guiding, I'd hunt a lot, but it'd be like on the weekends or 3 days here. When you're guiding, you're hunting 20 days a month. So you can really see the difference, and the dog food's awesome. So, and then for collars, I only recommend and only use Garmin. I won't use anything else.
sure.
So,
No, I get it. I mean, you see it, you see it, what works and what doesn't work. And I mean, there's a reason both of those brands are so well known throughout the industry, right?
yeah. Yeah. So,
Well, James, I really appreciate you being on the show. It's been great talking to you. It's been a fun episode. I really learned a lot about out west and everything else. And like the passion you have for dogs comes through. I mean, it's huge.
oh, yeah. Well, if you ever come out west, let me know, and we'll get you on birds. We'll take you hunting.
Absolutely. It's on my list. And yeah, I got places I got to be like that's on my list of things to do for sure. I'll wait. It's going to be a couple of years yet because I want to go out with with my own dog. I want to come out there
Of course.
and
Of course.
she's a little too old to be running 200 yards in that many miles. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, definitely on my list, more than just a bucket list because it's definitely going to happen. So, but I really appreciate you coming on tonight, and to all my listeners, thank you again for listening. This is the last episode before we do our Christmas break. So I will be back again come January with a whole new year, and that'll be right about my 1 year mark for the seasons as well. So yeah, that'll be my 1 year podcast anniversary. So yeah, it'll be another good year. So until next time, everyone, keep chasing that experience.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle_and_fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle_and_fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jigmasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com